So I want to start by just letting you know, here's a little pro tip that you guys only find in this session. You may not even find it in any other session. If you wanted to do a presentation like I'm doing and you have a slide deck, but you actually want to present the slide deck and still have access to other tabs, I like to be able to switch between tabs when I'm doing things like this. There's a trick, and if you go up here to the address and you delete all of this extra stuff that's edit and whatever else is there, all the way up to that last dash, and you type in the word present, it shows the presentation now in full screen in that window, but I still have all of my other tabs available. So that's just a pro tip right there. If you're ever trying to do presentations and you want to be able to switch between tabs, just add the word present to the end of that address with all the other stuff removed, and you'll still be able to do both. So there's a bonus for you. All right. Very quickly, the session info, the way Google Meet works, you can change the layout yourself if you want. Under those dots down there, we'll talk more about those 3 dots. You could theoretically present your own computer. Please don't. You can turn captions on and off for yourself. Those are live captions, so anytime anybody is speaking, it automatically writes that for you. You can also mute your audio, which all of you have done successfully. And I would recommend you also mute your camera so that you are taking up less bandwidth for yourself and have a more successful, more successful. Asking questions, there is a Q&A document that is linked, and that's also linked from this document. It just brings you here. What you see in the document currently are questions that came from our last session. If you just scroll down below, you might see a question that you already had, but there's space at the bottom to be able to add your own questions if you have those. All right, so that's pretty much it for the slide deck. Let's go ahead and work here from this document. This is where I'm going to be doing most of the work. And I'd like to let you know that that small slide deck that we looked at is linked here. There's the Q&A document. The district is providing a sign-in link so that if you want to let the district know that you are attending these sessions, that helps with verifying CDE credit and all that kind of good stuff. The link for that is on this purple document as well. Basically, what we're going to be looking at today is a little bit of background on how we got where we are in terms of the use of technology. We're going to talk a little bit about browsers because there's some confusion around some of those things. We're going to talk a little bit about Google. We're going to manage tabs in our browser. We'll talk about that. We'll help you find your DPS Google account, make sure that that's covered. We're going to talk a little bit about copying and sharing links. And then we're going to look at a couple of fun ideas at the end and let you know about some additional Google classes people could take if you're interested in those. Let's take a quick look here at our chat and let me know if there's anything you guys need to know. Kimberly, yes, there should be sound, but if you can't hear anything, you aren't hearing me say that. So Jen, if you could help Kimberly figure out how to turn the volume on her computer, possibly.
No problem.
That might be helpful. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. There is definitely sound, and there are a couple of people who are not hearing that. So we'll try to get them helped out there. There definitely is sound, though. All right. I'm going to spend some time here talking just about how we got here. I'd like to start off by telling a little bit of a story and a little bit about me. I would like to let you know that I have been around technology for over 50 years. I'm kind of old if you haven't figured that out yet, but computers have always been a part of my life, and I feel like I've been very proficient with computers. My first computer experience consisted of a keyboard and a printer, and I would type in instructions, and the computer in the next room, which took up a whole room, would figure out what it needed to respond, and it would print out a response to me. That's how long ago it's been. But to tell you a quick story, that doesn't mean that I don't have any gaps, because it's really hard to know what you don't know. And true story admission here, I had a very embarrassing gap early on. I had a computer at home. It ran with a keyboard, and it had a monochrome monitor, and I could type in instructions and that kind of thing. But the first time I sat down at a computer that had a mouse, I thought, I know what that is. I can move it around and I can click on things. And I thought, I can figure this out. And I tried moving it around, and the cursor, the mouse, the little thing on the screen moved around, and it clicked on things, but nothing ever happened. And I couldn't figure out how to make anything happen. And I spent a half an hour clicking on things and wondering why it wasn't working, and got very frustrated. And I finally got up 30 minutes later and left, not knowing that there was such a thing as a double click. No one had ever told me that secret before. And a lot of technology has these little undisclosed secrets like that. So I hope that you don't feel embarrassed by having your own gaps. I spent half an hour, didn't even know I could double click something to make an application open on a computer. Even though I felt very confident using computers, I didn't have that one bit of information that I needed to get me unstuck. So I would invite you, if you want, you could share your gaps in the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to address some of those during our session today. All right, so in the interest of filling gaps, I want to let people know that technology has been around for quite a while, but I want you to know that it doesn't do anything different that didn't already exist in another form. For example, the computer I'm looking at right now has a keyboard and a display and a processor and all those kinds of things, but that keyboard was taken from a typewriter, and that display was originally taken from a TV set, and that processor was originally taken from a calculator. Those were all known concepts that have just been accumulated into what we now call a computer or a laptop or even a phone. Those are not difficult concepts. Those are ones that we already have. But technology has a tendency to exaggerate those concepts that we already have. That's why I have this odd picture of these two people here with these microphones, these well, I don't know what they would call those. Those are listening devices that help grab and accentuate small sounds so that they can hear over long distances. Those were actual devices that were used in wartime and were later replaced by better tools. When you are working with technology, I just want you to know that it's a lot like adding spices to something that bring out the flavor. Whatever flavor or culture you have in your classroom, that will be exaggerated by technology. It's not going to be a different kind of culture or flavor. If there are positive, collaborative things already happening in your classroom, those can be helped and exaggerated by technology and reinforced. But if there are challenges and inappropriate behavior in the classroom and bullying already happening, that will, of course, also be exaggerated and enhanced in your classroom. So it's important to keep that in mind. Kids do not naturally behave in one context and then behave the same way in another context. They have to relearn those behaviors in every context they approach. So technology is only going to accent whatever is already happening in your classroom. So be careful about that. I feel that reputation and authenticity have an enormous value on the internet because you have to be able to trust what you are seeing. And sometimes people trust too much what they're seeing. They're not critical enough about, do I trust this information? We're living in a world where that's pretty much normal anymore, is too much information, too many connections, too much is known about all of those connections. So that's a little bit of background about how we got here. You may be interested in an article. There's a link here about a brief history of the internet if you want to know more about where it came from and why it was developed. And it's been with us since 1969. Or you might even want to read this article from Vannevar Bush in the 1945 Atlantic Monthly, describes pretty much what the internet became a long time ago. These concepts are not new. They've been around, and we're just living in them now. All right, so the first gap that I want to address is the idea of a browser. Now, some of you're already running a browser. A browser is an application that is on your computer that allows you to connect to the internet. And we use browsers like Internet Explorer or Chrome or Edge, which is Microsoft's new browser replacing Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari. These are all very popular browsers. They exist even on your phone. You might find those or some variation of those. Right now, what we're recommending is that people use the Chrome browser. It's made by Google, and oddly enough, the Google tools that we use every day work best in Google Chrome browser. If you don't have Google's Chrome browser already on your computer, if you're only using Firefox or only using Internet Explorer or only using Safari, there is a quick link. Just Google Get Chrome and you'll find it, but it's www.google.com/Chrome, and you can download this browser onto your own computer. That brings us to a new concept. What if the browser was the application that ran the whole computer, the operating system? And it turns out that's what a Chromebook is. A Chromebook runs the Chrome browser as its operating system. So everything it does is already a Google Chrome. So I'm going to jump back here to the meat for a second because I'm hearing a microphone that was open. Looks like it got turned off. There's a test user. I wonder who that is. I don't know, but they're going to be muted. So awesome. I think that's everybody now. I'm not hearing any background sounds. Great. All right. So if you don't have Google Chrome, now would be a good time to go ahead and download that and install it. We do recommend using Google Chrome for your remote learning because it will connect to most of the tools in the best way, especially Google applications. All right. Sometimes I will use the term browser and Chrome interchangeably. And I'm going to go find that microphone. I'm going to find it. It's here somewhere. Let's see if I can get to it before I do. I don't see it. Somebody's mic is open, but I'm only seeing my own. Okay. All right. Back to the browser. I want to point out that Google is not the internet. A lot of people, you may have seen this on late night TV where they go out and interview people on the street and they ask them, what's the internet? And they mostly just think that's Google, that Google is the internet. Google is just one company that provides a service of searching everything on the internet for us before we look for it. I wanted to point out that in your browser, actually, I'll get to that point later. I'm getting off track. To let you know, Google is not the entire internet. Google searches what it can find because it can make money off of advertisements based on that storehouse of data that they have about all of the information that's going on the internet. Not only do they have the data points themselves, they have the connections between all of that data. Anytime you use Google and you search for something, that's a new connection. And those connections are collected by Google. Google knows probably more about you than you even know about yourself. They just collect everything that you do when you're on the internet. Theoretically, that's helpful because it means you can find things more quickly. But you do need to realize that sometimes what you find is a link that someone has paid Google to highlight. So when they search for a keyword, they get their site rather than somebody else's website. So information is bought and sold freely on the internet, but not freely. It's quite prevalent. Make sure I'm using the right terms here. But your information is also very available on the internet. I wouldn't recommend doing it very often, but every once in a while, it's kind of interesting to Google your own name and see how much of your own information is available out there. It's quite a bit. And our kids are growing up in that kind of an environment without ever even knowing that there could be a different way to do things. That's just normal for them. So Google is helpful, just like Yahoo or Bing or any of the other search engines. They search for us, but they are not themselves the internet. All right, next thing I want to mention is tabs. You may notice that I have 4 tabs along the top. I have one that's the Google Meet. I have the tab for the document that I'm in. I have my slide deck, and then I have the document that is linked for our Q&A. So I can switch between these tabs by just clicking the name of the tab. Some people are tabaholics. They add so many tabs that you start to lose what the tabs mean. I like this one, this link here, send help please. They have so many tabs open. That's an interesting way to do that. It's helpful to add tabs. Tabs just give you a new window. I'm going to come up here and add a new window. Okay, somebody's microphone is still on. Jen, is your microphone on? Somebody still has
now it is. Now it is, but no, it was not.
Okay, thank you. I'm still hearing somebody else, but I can't find who that is in the list. Interesting. All right, I was just showing that you could have a new window. Yep, here's a new window, and it has only one tab in it. And I could go to a new address here, and I could add additional tabs. And as I do that, oh, I think I know where the sound is coming from. This is my other Hangout that I'm getting ready to do my next session. It's not this session. As I do that, the tabs get smaller and smaller until they get to the point where they're no help at all. They're just clutter. They're confusion. You want to make sure that you are judicious in your use of tabs and closing them when you don't need them so that you're not overwhelming yourself. I like to group my tabs so that one window has all of the tabs that are connected and another window shows me different tabs. So I'm actually going to jump over to that other meeting for just a second, that one, because as I suspected in this meeting, somebody has their microphone open, and that's what we're hearing. And there it is. That's what I'm hearing in the background. Awesome. So you guys are all doing it well, and I'll have to remind the other group when that starts in an hour to do that as well. All right. Back to this presentation. Sorry for clicking around so much. I always get a little dizzy when the presenter moves around really fast, and I hope that isn't happening to you. But I would like to recommend that you have only open as many tabs as you need to have. And also to remember that when you're working on a Chromebook, if the Chromebook is slowing down, one reason might be because there are too many tabs open. Each tab is really its own application. And the more tabs you have open, the harder the computer has to work to keep all of those tabs functioning. So a nice set of tabs is helpful. Too many tabs is just confusing. Jen, how are we doing? Are there any questions I need to address at this point?
Yeah, some of the questions you may end up addressing it a little bit later in the session, but one main question is, how do you upload a document from your desktop onto Google Classroom?
Okay, that's a great question, and I would recommend highly that you take one of our Google Classroom sessions or view the session video. We're linking all of those in our remotelearning.dpsk12.org site. But basically, in Google Classroom, when you make an assignment, you have an option to add a document either from your hard drive or from your Google Drive. It's an option down at the bottom of the assignment itself. And if you stick around after the session is done in about another 15 minutes or so, we could take a look at that if you want. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to make sure everybody had clearly was using your DPS Google account. I have a personal Gmail account, and I have a Gmail account that I use to support a small children's theater that I work with. And then I also have a Google account that DPS provides me. And sometimes that can get a little confusing, but you want to make sure that when you are signed into Chrome, you are signed in using your DPS account. And you can get to your DPS account either from the DPS homepage. Down at the bottom, there's a DPS Google link that takes you to the sign-in page. Or you can find it from the Commons if any of you are using the Commons. That's another kind of an intranet that we use in DPS to find things. And it's also on the DPS teacher portal as one of the district applications. So any of those will take you to this link, googlemail.dpsk12.net. Everything that you see that's dpsk12.net, that's an indicator that it is your DPS Gmail, DPS Google account. That's our DPS Google domain. Every student and every employee in DPS has an account, and it may not know this, but every student's account is their student ID number at dpsk12.net. Their password, unless it has been changed, and hopefully at least all of our high school students are changing their passwords, is their birth date, their 8-digit, so day, month, year, year is their default password. It doesn't take too much thought for somebody who's one of the students. I would have been this kind of student. If I knew that my birth date and my student ID number got me into my account, I knew that all I would have to do is look up my friend's birth date, figure that out because they invited me to their birthday one year, and take a look at their student ID number, which is in the email that you would be sending them if you search them by name, and I would start logging into other people's accounts. It's not a great idea for people to do that. I don't encourage anybody to do that. But it does bring up the idea that we do need to be cognizant of security issues. And DPS has decided, and very wisely, that everybody needs to update their password. You may have already done that. If you have not, you can go to iforgot.dpsk12.org and update your password through that link. There are some limits on what kind of password you should have. It needs to be, I believe, 12 characters long at least. It should probably have capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and so on. I have a pretty long password, but it's a phrase that I use. I'm not going to mention the phrase, but it's easy for me to remember because it's a common phrase for me. It's not something that anybody else would know. I'm going to try to sign into it now so you can see how this works. And to do that, I'm going to use something called an incognito window. Now, an incognito window is not available to students because this is a way that they can sign in anonymously on their Chromebook and bypass filters and stuff. So that's option is turned off for students, but for teachers, you can open a new incognito window. And it has this little spy sort of guy here in the middle, so I know I've gone incognito, and this window is not logged into anything. Notice there's nothing up here. There are no extensions. On my browser over here, there's a ton of extensions, too many extensions. I should be getting rid of some of those. That's a class you want to take on more Google information. But I'm back here in my incognito window. This is like starting from scratch. Nothing else is loaded up. I find that incognito windows are really helpful if I'm experiencing a problem accessing something in, say, Schoology, where it looks like there's supposed to be a resource there, but it's just a blank box and nothing loads up. Sometimes there are extensions that I'm running that interfere with other extensions. So I need to sometimes go into my incognito window to get to those resources. So here's what I'm going to try to do now. I'm going to try to sign into my DPS Google account, googlemail.dpsk12.net, and notice that the browser was very kind to try to guess what I might be trying to go to. And it says, oh, you want to search for what you've typed so far, or are you trying to get to googlemail.dpsk12.net? It's filling in the blank for me. Just another indication that, yes, it is actually learning and following everything that I do. So I'm trying to go to googlemail.dpsk12.net, and if I got this right, this should take me to the sign-in window for it. It's connecting at the moment. By the way, it's always good to look around the screen to see what you're finding. I noticed that this is spinning up here at the top, and I get a little message that says connecting, and I'm going to bail out of this activity here in about 5 seconds if it doesn't actually connect. I find that sometimes if a site doesn't respond, I can click on this stop loading and try it again. So we'll try one more real quick one. There we go. This brings me to the login page. My username is my first name underscore last name. Yours, if you have been in DPS for quite a while, if you're a veteran teacher, might only be your first initial and 6 letters of your last name. If you're more recent to DPS, it's going to be your first name and underscore and then last name. So here's my password. Quite long. It would take a hacker quite a while to find out what that was. But it's easy for me to remember, and I'm used to typing it. And that takes me to my Gmail. You'll find out more about things. I'm going to leave this page up in the background so I can talk about some of the different kind of menus that we find here. I'm going to go ahead and pause there for a moment. Jen, do we have any questions about using Google or accessing our account or student email?
No, we do not at the moment.
Great, great. All right, that brings us up to links and sharing links then. I want to point out, and I'll do that in my incognito window. It's this one. I'm going to open up a new tab real quickly, and I'm going to go to google.com. This is a pretty standard website. A lot of people start with this page when they're writing in their browser or just browsing, just opening up their browser. Might start here, might start with Yahoo, might start with Bing, might start with DBS homepage if you set it up that way. There are two areas here that I want you to know about. One is this search bar. And then I also want you to notice the address bar up here. This address bar has gotten more smart, and it functions the same as the search bar. They call this an omnibar now in Google. This is a search box. This is where you would normally type in. So earlier I wanted to look for how to insert emojis on a Windows computer. And I found this nice website that showed me how to do that. It remembers my recent searches. It also does some interesting things. So let's try, for example, what's so funny about, and it just starts filling in what other people have searched for. Like, what's so funny about the number 420? If you don't know what that number references, you can find out. And if you want to look for other things like Colorado is good for, people have been looking for place to live, food, beginners, vacation. Just interesting to see what other people are searching for when they search for Colorado. Anyway, this is where you would put search terms, keywords, ideas. This is where you would put addresses. So this address up here at the top, by the way, that lock is a good thing to see. Your browser will tell you if this is a secure website or not. If you highlight all of that address and copy it, you can share this link in any number of ways. You could share it in an email and just paste it in and send it to somebody. You have to put in their email address, of course, but that's an easy way to send something. You can paste this into a document. For example, I'm going to paste it into our Q&A down here. Simple link. And paste it in. Interesting, it's not pasting. I don't know why it's not pasting. Paste. There we go. If I leave it like that, it's just text. But if I add a space or a return, it turns it into an actual hot link. I could put it in a Schoology assignment. I could put this link in a Google Classroom assignment. I could put it in a Seesaw assignment. I can paste that link in pretty much anywhere I want. I can also, on a document, again, pretty much in any application, I can highlight that text or picture, find the little chain link option. It's one of our tools. And I can paste in that link. Now, that word has become a link. Same thing can be done with images. So I can turn things into links. I can turn text into links. And I can share this link in a number of different ways. I also have some different kinds of sharing options. Sometimes you'll see an arrow pointing off to the side with the word share. Sometimes it's a box with an arrow coming out of the top. Looks a little bit like this one on Pinterest. I like this one because it's an example of the idea that you can share things in other applications directly. I could post this on Twitter or Facebook, or I could send this through email. So if you're ever on Pinterest and you want to share something, you have lots and lots of options about sharing that with others. All right, I went to pause for a moment there, see if we have any questions. We're almost out of time. So a little bit more about being a detective. This is the fun stuff. I always look for extra things. And these symbols are good examples of extra things. So these arrows are pretty common in most platforms, a right arrow and a left arrow. And you can see them right up here. That allows you to undo the last thing you did or redo the last thing you did. Sometimes you type something in and you realize, no, wrong space, or I didn't want that. You can undo it. Or if you deleted something and you want to put it back, you can redo it as well. I also like this little caret, this little triangle that drops down next to menu items, because that means there's other stuff that you might want to look at. For example, when I click on this icon for an image, because mountains are very pictorial, I could upload from a computer. I could search the web for an image. I could select one from my Google Drive or my Google Photos. I could paste in the web address of that video, or I could use my camera and take a picture. That's a nice set of additional options rather than just insert a picture. So they hide all of these other options until you need them. Google and everybody else is trying to be helpful by hiding the clutter, by making it accessible if you need it. The gear is another really important one to look for. And I'm going to switch back to my Google Mail here, because this application, Google Mail, has a gear setting that helps me configure how I want Google Mail to work. I'm not going to click on this one at this point, but it's always interesting to go into the settings for whatever program you're working on, any web-based program, to see what else might be available to you that's not currently there. And last but not least, we have the 3 dots, the vertical ellipses. Sometimes they are vertical, like they are up here in this corner. There are more things for me to look at up there, is what it's telling me. Sometimes they are, wrong window. Sometimes it's 3 lines. Sometimes the dots are horizontal, sometimes the dots are vertical, but all of those will bring you to an option of what else is there for me to see. But look for those 3 dots, be a detective. You'll find them all over the place. That's where usually the fun stuff is, where that's usually hidden. The gear is important, the little triangle is important, arrows are always important. All right. Last thing I want to mention is that on this document, and we'll be posting this in other places, there is a selection of applied digital skills from Google that you are free to take if you want to dive into some specifics about using any of the Google tools. These are developed by Google. They're high quality and well worth your time if you want to work on some of those on your own. Also on this document down here at the bottom, we have tinyurl.com/ETLS-remote-PD, and I will post that in our chat real quick. This is where you can go to give me some feedback so that I can make this a better session next time. My contact information is listed down here. If you want to know who your digital coach is for your school, you can click on this link and look up your school to see who your digital coach is. If you're in an innovation zone, you don't have a digital coach because your school is opted out of many district services. You can, however, get a hold of us by emailing edtech@dpsk12.org. All right, so I'm going to post in that link into the chat real quick. Wrong button. If you would be so kind as to provide me with some feedback. And that's, oh, I'm still too far in. There we go. That would be awesome. You're welcome to stick around for a little while if you have some questions. I've got about another 10 minutes or so before I have to jump over to another session. But I want to thank you. I want to congratulate you for making it this far. We live in an extraordinary time, And I think you guys are extraordinary for helping your kids stay on trajectory for their goals in life. And I think that you're doing a wonderful job of getting them there. So thank you for joining me today. And stick around if you've got a question or two, and hopefully we'll see you in another session. Thank you.
Matthew?
Yes, I'm still here. I just wanted to stop.